My name is Amit Sahai. I'm a professor here at UCLA in computer science.
Good. And so you work particularly around cryptography, right?
That's right. My area is cryptography.
Okay, cryptography in computer science, but also in math, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, the foundations of cryptography are all mathematics, and that's my primary role, is I prove theorems for a living.
So I wonder what is your expectation?
It's still possible that what we'll find is that quantum computers can't exist. And in fact, there are new laws of nature that we have to discover through the quest of searching for quantum computers. So to me, that's the most exciting possibility of all. Now, when would we, if that's not the case, if quantum computers can exist, when would they exist? Again, there has been really exciting progress recently, but it's always some movement and then some backsliding and then some movement and then some backsliding. And I personally have not yet seen an experiment that makes me convinced that some real non-trivial quantum computation is going on.
So you think that there might be not even the possibility?
Absolutely. That would be amazing, right? That would mean that our understanding of the universe is incomplete. Our understanding of basic physics is incomplete. And quantum computers will actually be one of the most sophisticated experimental systems that we've ever built to help us understand the true nature of the universe.
So you are confident that a quantum computer will be made, but you are not sure if that quantum computer will be able to break encryption ever.
It's possible. It's possible that we build a quantum computer, we do our absolute best, and we find that it still doesn't break, like let's say we use Shor's algorithm, and it doesn't break RSA, for example, RSA public key encryption. Right?
But there are plenty of alarm bells, efforts. And,
Absolutely. Sorry, let me be clear. You asked me a question, so I'm asking you. I think it's a possibility.
It is.
I think obviously we have to be prepared, right? Because, so far quantum mechanics has stood this test of time. If quantum mechanics is correct, then quantum computers will eventually be built, and those quantum computers will eventually be able to break our currently deployed public key cryptography, for example, RSA encryption.
You are saying we are that far away that we don't know if that is going to happen yet.
That's right. Yeah. It's a very exciting time because we still don't know for sure which way things will turn out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from instead of mathematical point of view, because also from a scientific point of view, let's forget for a minute Peter Shor algorithm and the actual building of the machine of the quantum computer. Let's forget a little bit about that, but let's focus on the scientific side.
Yeah.
In that case, do you think there could be some other scientific breakthrough?
Absolutely. In fact, I think it's a good analogy to think about the field of computer programs and computer algorithms, right? So before we had computers, there were only a few people who tried to make computer programs because there wasn't a computer yet. Once we built computers, the field of computer algorithms took off, and we had an incredible breakthrough after breakthrough in terms of computer algorithms and their capabilities. I think it's very likely for us to expect the same thing to happen once we actually build a quantum computer. We're going to see incredible breakthroughs, in particular, it could get a lot worse for us from the point of view of cryptography. Maybe a lot of the schemes that we currently, in 2025, think are quantum resistant, they'll turn out to be quantum broken. So I think it's actually extremely important for us on the mathematics side to prepare for that and actually build a very, very large portfolio of possible post-quantum crypto systems, so that even if a few of them end up being broken by later amazing advances, we'll still have something to fall back on.
Okay. And from the side of having tools and methods to break the current encryption, so far we know about the Peter Shor algorithms.
Absolutely.
But do you think there might be sooner or later new algorithms that are similar, or at least they have the same aims? I mean, I say quantum algorithms that are able to break the current encryption systems?
Absolutely. In fact, that's something that I'm working on right now, trying to develop new kinds of quantum algorithms that can break different aspects of cryptography that we currently think are quantum secure. These are only opinions right now. We're just at the very beginning of this field. So it could very well be that the schemes that we currently think are quantum secure are actually completely quantum broken. And we need research to figure that out, to understand what is actually secure and what is actually broken.
In talking about opinion, and I know this is a tricky question,
Sure.
do you think the current public key encryption systems, the RCA and so on, can be broken from a very fundamental principle? We rely on that mathematical rule. We call it a rule, we call it law, but might be that just an assumption that is valid until we don't discover anything new?
Yeah, what your question gets at really the heart of modern cryptography. So, in fact, there is a $1 million problem called the P versus NP problem, which is unsolved. And what that means is every single current encryption scheme that we have is just based on our best effort guess as to whether it's secure or not. It could wind up being the case that even classical computers can break RSA. That's still possible. We haven't ruled that out. So we know for sure that quantum computers can break RSA encryption, but what about other schemes? We don't know. We just don't know. The honest truth is, as a scientific community, we do not know the answers to these questions. We can only study them and try to build evidence that they're secure or they're insecure.
The consequences are quite big, right?
Yeah. Oh, there very much are. And I have had students email me, regularly with ideas for how to classically break RSA. Now, they've never worked, but the point is that we do and we should keep trying, because think about it this way. If some foreign government figured out an algorithm that can break RSA, would they announce it to the world?
No.
Probably not, right? But we're the public research, we are the face of public research. If we find a problem, we can correct it, right? We can build another algorithm, we can find some alternative. And that's why I think we're at a point right now in history where it is absolutely essential that we learn as many different ways of building public key cryptography as possible. And right now we only have a handful of ways. So this, I think, is one of the most pressing societal issues that have to do with cryptography, is to diversify our portfolio of cryptographic systems.
And what would you do if, if tomorrow a student of you or a friend of mine emailed you and says, well, look, I actually figured this out. And you get to know that, and you can prove it. I mean, you can verify that actually that rule is broken. What would you do personally?
What would I do personally? Well, I'd probably celebrate first, because that's an amazing accomplishment for our species. But then I would have to think very hard about who I should contact next. Right. Should it be the New York Times? Should it be the NSA? Should it be some other government official? That would be a very difficult thing that thankfully I have not yet had to confront.
Yeah, well, if you tell to the New York Times, it's probably going to produce so much panic.
Yeah, I think probably I would wait on that.
The
but
NSA too probably don't want to be the first telling it to the NSA, or maybe yes.
Well, that's a more I think in situations like that, one would hope that one can trust one's government to help do what's right, especially in a democracy. We would hope that that's the case, right? And because, these kinds of secrets will not be well kept. So things would have to be changed very rapidly. Now, we're already underway on that, right? It's already the case that many large companies are starting to make the transition to post-quantum cryptography, which again just means that we currently believe that it is likely to be post-quantum secure.
Yeah, and but also it's not just that we don't know how robust they will be, because they need to be tested. Maybe it takes a year to be tested.
Absolutely.
Under a number of attacks.
Yeah,
also takes some time to implement them.
Right. Implementation, we've made a lot of progress on. There are a lot of good implementations out there. There are standardization efforts that are underway. So the government has been on top of this. The research community has been on top of this. But not to sound alarmist, but we have to be aware of the fact that we don't yet have quantum computers, right? To really robustly test these new cryptosystems, we need to investigate quantum algorithms for them. And investigating quantum algorithms right now has to be entirely in our brains, right? Because we don't actually have quantum computers. Right. We can simulate very, very small quantum algorithms, but for large-scale problems, we don't have any good ways of simulating them without quantum computers. So I'm sure there'll be some surprises up ahead, and I think we have to be ready for those surprises. We can't just say, oh, we have one system, we think it's quantum secure, we're fine. We have to be ready. We have to have maybe dozens of different post-quantum secure systems, so that if out of the 24, 20 of them end up being broken, we still have 4 left, right, that we can use to secure commerce and all sorts of communications.
We know about the efforts of NIST that are based in the US, and they are also actually right now that program ended, by the way, as far as I know. They probably still research, but most of the people that were involved are not there anymore. You think internationally there could be another agency or another standard that would bring everyone together to start to work on post-quantum cryptography already now and keep researching in the next years?
Very good. So the way that this has to work is that in the beginning, there has to be just exploratory research, right? And now, with regard to the exploratory research that undergirds the current post-quantum schemes, that was actually done in the very late 1990s and early 2000s, and only now reached the level of maturity that it was able to be standardized, right? So with regard to developing other kinds of post-quantum cryptosystems, we're still at that initial phase. We need to build initial proposals and work on them for many, many years to develop them. Now, of course, more funding makes that happen faster, but this is an area that needs a great deal of public investment.
Do you envision anything else internationally, I mean?
Right. Well, I really think at this stage, it has to be the research funding agencies. So for example, the ERC, the European Research Council. Similarly, there's the National Science Foundation in the US. These agencies have to fund that initial exploratory research to help us understand how we are going to build these dozens of different approaches that could give us potential post-quantum security.
We know there are many other private companies that are investigating this potential of quantum computing and eventually also breaking encryption. So let's say that one of these companies is actually having a breakthrough and keep it secret. From the scientific community, do you think there is anyone that could force them to reveal their secrets?
That's an interesting question. I would bet that if it's a company that has such a breakthrough, there's an ecosystem of companies, right? And they're all sort of making progress together. So I think that if there was such a breakthrough, it's likely to be made public relatively quickly because of efforts that are going on in other companies, because these researchers are talking to each other. So as long as that remains the case, personally, I think that the scenario that you're envisioning is relatively unlikely from the public research perspective. Now, are there foreign state organizations or domestic state organizations that are doing quantum research and keeping it completely secret? I'm sure there are. I think that is a very serious risk.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's again the same situation. What would you do if you have a breakthrough? How do you reveal it? How do you disclose such big news? Because it's quite sensitive, right? So I think even a private company, but even like a government, a foreign government, would have the same questions. What do we do with this right now?
Certainly. Yeah, I think that what I hope is that the way things will work out is that we have our current candidate post-quantum encryption schemes that have been standardized. Hopefully they will be widely deployed and the entire internet will be working on these post-quantum things, so that way, if there's a major quantum breakthrough, people will feel more at peace in making it public, because anyway the world has already moved on to post-quantum secure systems.
What are instead the principles behind the idea of breaking encryption at all costs? Because you were mentioned that's what you do, actually, what you are also working here at the university, or what you push for also with your students, so that we need to break encryption.
Right, and again, I would put it differently. The way that I see it is that we don't yet understand mathematically what encryption schemes are actually hard to break and which ones aren't. The only way that we as a species can make progress on this is by trying our hardest to break, so that we understand what is actually secure and what is not. Suppose we didn't do that, right? Suppose that we said, oh, it's okay, we'll just come up with schemes, we won't bother to break them. Well, you can be sure that someone else is trying to break them, and then we would be lulled into a false sense of security. So it's absolutely critical that public research also continuously tries to break encryption schemes, so that we actually have confidence in what we're using.
Yeah, at all cost, even though, I mean, then there is all the ethics of disclosement, right? I mean, once you discovered such thing.
Yeah, so maybe let me answer that in a few stages. So as I said, I think the first thing we need is exploratory research. So this is research on crypto systems that are not deployed, that aren't planning to be deployed right now. We're just speculating, we're thinking about them. Breaking those schemes, which is what most of my research is on, is without any societal cost, right? It only informs us as a community as to what is secure and what is not secure, right? Now, when a system is already deployed, like RSA is, there, I agree with you, it becomes a lot more thorny a question, a lot more delicate a question. I think it's still imperative that we spend resources on it, but you're absolutely right. If I, for example, or if working with my students, if we make some breakthrough on factoring that can break RSA, then we would be in a bind. We would have to think very hard about how to disclose what mechanisms to use right now.
But in the world of cryptography, do you guys have a code of conduct or kind of like ethics for disclosing such informations? I mean, not breaking the RCA every day, of course.
Right.
In other cases.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's not an area that I personally work in. I don't go and try to find vulnerabilities in public schemes. I'm more on the mathematics of it. But the people who work in that area, they have very strong notions of codes of ethics, where there should first be a private disclosure, there should be an attempt to remediate, and only then should it be made public.
But that means that you went with the cybersecurity people at that point. I mean, you as a mathematician, if you discover something in the math of cryptography, then you would immediately call the cybersecurity guys and say, well, I discovered this. And so in that case, what is your ethics in that case? Well, you do it as soon as you can, I imagine.
Right. Well, yeah, I would certainly reach out to trusted cybersecurity researchers and ask for their advice. This hasn't happened yet, but it would be something that would require a great deal of thought. I'm hesitant to even give you any answer right now. It would require, very, very careful thought
Yeah.
to think exactly how we would go through that, and obviously minimizing societal harm.
Until it works, we should use it, of course.
Right.
But then building too much on it might have been a bad ideas. What do you think?
I don't agree with that, just because this is just the fundamental nature of all human activity, right? We, we don't have certainty for almost anything. How do you know that you'll be alive tomorrow? You don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow, right? And we have to just make do with our best efforts, right? We have to do our best, just try as hard as we can to figure out what the truth is, and then try to base our life on it. And we had a lot of excellent evidence that this problem had been open for hundreds of years. No one knew how to do it. So that's a pretty good reason, right? And in some sense, these new systems that we're planning to build now, the post-quantum ones, we have even less evidence, right, that they're secure, because we haven't been working on them as long, right? And so this is just the fundamental nature of human discovery right now. Now, do I hope that one day we will be able to prove everything? We will be able to prove that there's absolutely no possible attack? I hope so. But we're very far from that right now. We need a lot more investment, a lot of very smart people thinking about that.
But at the same time, maybe there could have been. Now we rely so much on this public key encryption, even when it's not the best solution. Even there is also symmetric encryption, right?
Good.
Without the public key encryption. And that is still more secure after all, or at least less vulnerable.
It is, yeah.
And so in some places, in some hardware, in some softwares, in some systems, that might have been the best choice.
Right. Well, let me just begin with an analogy, right? Let's think about what symmetric key encryption is, right? Symmetric key encryption assumes that you and I first meet in some dark alleyway and we physically exchange some secret that we know no one else can find, right? And then we use that previously exchanged secret to then communicate securely afterwards. But how many times do you go and meet Amazon in a dark alleyway, to exchange a secret with it? You don't, right? And that's why public key cryptography was such a revolution. That's why it was this incredible thing in the history of the internet, in the history of computer science. So there are reasons why we need to use public key encryption. But you raise an excellent point, which is, for example, suppose you're working within a discrete organization. Suppose that you have your organization and you have, only, let's say, 10,000 people in it, and you need to communicate securely amongst yourselves. Then you don't need public key encryption, right? That's a case where you actually can hand out devices to your employees that are preloaded with certain keys, and then use that assumption, the assumption of the physical security of that device, to build secure communication.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you that there are important use cases where we should be using symmetric encryption, and maybe we aren't right now. That too is because of the research that needs to be done. There has to be research done in these areas to understand when and how costly can symmetric encryption solutions be. And someone has to do that research. Some mathematicians have to sit down and work all that out. And if you ask, well, why haven't we done that? It's because we haven't done the math, right? And once the math gets done, then someone will build a product, and it'll get used by organizations, and we'll have a greater degree of security.
Yeah, right. I think I was saying that particularly thinking about the financial system and the cryptocurrencies that have been all based on that sort of cryptography.
Right.
they're still quite vulnerable to quantum attacks. And so
Right.
maybe in those cases there was an exaggeration to, build on top of that all this financial system, which
Right.
works, but we don't know for how long. And
Right. Well, let me first just remind everyone that cryptocurrency is still very, very young, right? And there's a reason why the world does not currently run on cryptocurrencies. It's because it is still an area that needs further testing, further development, further understanding of security. And of course, we see in the news, on a regular basis, some cryptocurrency scam, someone who is able to exploit some vulnerability in cryptocurrency to steal money without any quantum computers, right? So this is an area that still needs a lot of development. And that development has to happen, again, by researchers, by mathematicians. And that's the only way that we can make progress. Also, I should note that not all cryptocurrency uses public key cryptography. There are many kinds of cryptocurrencies that only use symmetric cryptography, or cryptographic hash functions as they're called, which we expect to be a lot more quantum resistant because they're a lot less structured. They don't have this beautiful mathematical structure that I was talking about earlier. So there's just such a wide variety here. I wish there was a simple answer I could give you, but it's a zoo. It's a cryptographic zoo. There's so many different animals that are useful for different purposes, and we have to explore that. We have to map that out and understand which kind of crypto critter we can use for which kind of objective.
yeah,
Right?
no, I was particularly thinking about Bitcoin because we also been interviewing some of the Bitcoin communities, and they're
Right.
actually taking measures.
Absolutely.
But apparently, it's quite a vulnerability there, and it's
Yeah.
also very hard to fix because the fork of the new system would
Yeah.
require everyone embracing it and
Absolutely.
plus
Yeah.
upgrading all the systems.
Right. Currently, my understanding, I'm not, this is not my area of specialty, but my understanding is that the primary vulnerability has to do with public key signature schemes. That the kind of signature schemes that are used in cryptocurrencies, if they're based on, let's say, RSA or factoring, then they're quantum vulnerable. But there are alternatives already. So for public key encryption, we have very few alternatives. But for public key signatures, we actually do have quite good alternatives that we believe will be much more quantum resistant. The problem is the signatures are longer. And because the signatures are longer, that affects the efficiency of the cryptocurrency. And that's where there's this tension between efficiency and security, which is another major tension that we will have to understand mathematically and how we can address it.
Yeah, and you would need to sign everything again,
Yeah.
which is quite a lot of work.
Just quite a lot of work.
Not efficient at all.
Right. Or I mean, you could just have a certain day after this day, only signatures that are post-quantum secure, or that we believe are post-quantum secure, will be valid.
Yeah, good luck with the Bitcoin people community.
Right.
That.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's so there's no worth to care about. I think probably the Bitcoin, even if some people lose some money or the value drop, is the last of the problem in this case.
It is, I think, and I think there is a reason why, again, I believe right now none of the world governments use Bitcoin as their currency, because we need to figure things out. So.
Yeah, well, there are people that believe in it too much, then for sure, probably.
I think that's a fair assessment. If there was one thing I would want to emphasize the most, it is this idea that we have a field of computer algorithms. We have a flourishing field of, beautiful programs that people are writing that can solve all kinds of problems. And that is because we have computers. Before we had computers, we didn't have computer algorithms. We don't have quantum computers yet. Imagine how much bigger that field will be once we have quantum computers. And what does that mean? That means our understanding of the power of quantum computing is just at the start. We're just at the beginning of that. So, what are the capabilities of quantum computing? We'll really only start to find out once we have quantum computers. And that presents great risks. That means that we have to be even more ready.
Yeah, that's why the temporary title of this documentary is not Post-Quantum Cryptography, but it's actually Post-Cryptography, because still we don't know which will be the cryptography system we will have in the future, in a way. It's still a working title.
That's okay.
Figuring, but
of course.
it wasn't a typo, it was kind of like more a provocation, because then, of course, the computers, the quantum computers are out there. There will be many other ways to break the code. There will be many other new form of cryptography systems, but it's all up to discussion, right? Because as you said, we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know yet, and we'll have to adapt rapidly. We will have to move. I think one of the important things to be done from a societal level is not only make that slow change to the current post-quantum candidate, but to ready ourselves for future rapid changes.
Yeah, they call it quantum agility.
Quantum agility, yeah, absolutely.